Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Before we start this week's National Interest, let me first of all wish you all a wonderful Diwali. I know these are tough times and there are multiple crises, and in fact in our writings and commentary we focus more on the crisis than on good news. But a festival is a festival, so celebrate. This is also the beginning of the festive season. It will go on till Christmas, holidays. I don't know what kind of holidays are possible now, but soon enough there'll be New Year, and there'll be a reasonable New Year. In fact, by the standards of 2020, 2021 is bound to be better. So on that optimism, again, a very, very happy Diwali to all of you. Now, having said that, let's come down to business for the week. Now, if you reflect on what's happening in Eastern Ladakh, the crisis with China, then one tough fact has to be stated. And that tough truth is that Narendra Modi has made, in his first 5 years as Prime Minister, he has made a blunder of Nehruvian proportions. What is that blunder? We'll debate. We will also tell you the reason why we call it half a blunder, not a full blunder. No reference to my young friend Chetan Bhagat and his half girlfriend, but it's half a blunder, and it's a strategic concept that I am talking about. So what happened? It is our presumption that in May of 2014, when Narendra Modi took over as Prime Minister of India, he made a presumption to himself that a war with any of the neighbors now was an impossibility, in the sense that Pakistan did not have the military wherewithal and was never going to build the military wherewithal to take Kashmir by force. So at worst, it will indulge in day-to-day terrorism, which can be dealt with. And China was militarily much bigger than India and economically much bigger than India. But China was now building a strong vested interest in stable relations with India, because China's vested interest was rising higher because of the trade surpluses, massive trade surpluses, at one point almost $70 billion a year. It's a lot. And also growing deeper because of equity investments by Chinese companies, Jack Ma and others, into a lot of Indian startups. So you will have to be stupid. I know we know the story of Kalidas, but you will have to be stupid to be sitting on the branch of a tree and cutting the same branch. So that's how it was presumed that na Pakistan se ladai hogi, na China se ladai hogi. And because a war was not going to happen, then India could delay its defense modernization and defense spending. And that's why if you see the record of last 6 years, in fact, 7 budgets, with each year, India's defense spending or defense budget has declined as a percentage of India's GDP. Now, this happened in spite of a double blow to India's defense budget. And what was the double blow? The first blow was that pension bill went up because OROP, one rank, one pension, was implemented, which was deserved, which was Modi government's political commitment in elections, or BJP's political commitment in elections. When that happened, a pension bill went up, and pension bill had been rising even earlier. Today you have a situation where pension bill of Indian Armed Forces is higher than their salary bill, and the gap is increasing. So that took away a chunk of the defense budget, which was not then made up or not topped up by way of increased budgets. And second, from 2017 onwards, after first 2 years of Modi, in fact, India's GDP growth slowed down. So it was sprinting earlier, then it slowed down to a canter, then it slowed down to a crawl, and then it went into free fall. So this year it's in the free fall. So if you take the same percentage of the GDP now, you get even less money. And meanwhile, remember, the rupee has weakened. A lot of the defense equipment has to be imported. So this calculation made in 2014 कि अभी जंग नहीं होने वाली. And also I have diplomacy, I have my own style. we will not let a war happen. You guys calm down. Let's focus on other things right now. Let's not bother so much about the military. Let's not be paranoid, because if at all the challenge will be across LOC in Kashmir, that we can handle en passant, as the old expression goes. Now, from where did this confidence further get strengthened that a war will not happen? So first of all, we know that Pakistan we can ignore because we can deal with them. But China. Now China, given the economic interests they had, were not going to fight a war. Why would they risk all that? And there, I don't know if anybody in Narendra Modi's inner councils read out Tom Friedman's Golden Arches theory to him or not. But Tom Friedman wrote a long time back when he was writing about globalization and celebrating it, that no two countries have ever gone to war with each other or can go to war with each other since they both acquire their golden arches, which means since both acquire their McDonald's restaurants. What that means, it's a metaphor, what that means is that once a nation becomes part of the global economic or financial system, then the country can't go to war, because the two countries which may be hostile with each other also have a vested interest in each other's bond prices. Now, the calculation may have been that given these interests, the Chinese would know that going to war with India or threatening India militarily would have incurred costs which are economic and also generational, because these are emotional scars that last a long time. Now, for people like us, this was not such an easy thing to understand. So once, in one of those rare conversations that Dr. Manmohan Singh had with some editors, very rarely, somebody asked him a question that, look, the Chinese have bulging foreign exchange reserves and they are buying into American bonds massively. So effectively, they are financing America's deficit. What happens if someday the Chinese decide to start dumping American bonds, selling American bonds, and destroy America's economy? And Dr. Singh smiled a little like a professor and he said, look, the moment the Chinese do it, the dollar will collapse. The moment the dollar collapses, the value of the yuan, Chinese currency, will shoot up. The moment that happens, Chinese exports will collapse. And China's economy is export dominated. So there is a balance of terror. It is the economics balance of terror or economic balance of mutually assured destruction. So we don't have the benefit or privilege of sitting across Mr. Modi occasionally to understand his mind. So we can only make some educated guesses, projections and analysis. So it is possible that Narendra Modi thought initially, if you go back to 2014-15, he actually made a serious effort to reach out to both China and Pakistan as well. So on his way back from Kabul, he made that stopover in Pakistan to meet Nawaz Sharif. I know for sure that his decision had taken his own diplomats, his own officers and policymakers by surprise. But his view then was, I am the Prime Minister, I can take a few risks. And he was also aware that Dr. Manmohan Singh, although he so wanted to visit his native village in Pakistan, was unable to do so because his officers kept on counseling caution with him or risk aversion. So his point was, I am not Manmohan Singh, I am an empowered Prime Minister with my majority, I will go where I want. So he went to Pakistan, but he realized soon enough something that his 9 predecessors as Prime Ministers of India since Mrs. Gandhi had also all realized after making their initial mistakes. That in Pakistan, power doesn't sit with the elected leader, even if the elected leader has humongous majority. Power sits with the powers that be. That's the people in khakis. And unless they have a strong interest in peace with India, nothing will work. So soon enough, he saw that initiative go wrong, and then he figured that maybe with Pakistan, hostility was useful because it was very productive in domestic politics. So you can see Uri and then surgical strikes helping sweep the UP election in a big way, and then Balakot, Pulwama, etc. similarly helping sweep the 2019 general election. So hostility with Pakistan, a continued hostility without a war, became a very useful thing in domestic politics, and it was left there. With the Chinese, on the other hand, he tried a different kind of outreach. He invited Xi Jinping to India. He made him land in his home state, that is Gujarat. He also reminded him that that's Mr. Modi, comes from the village, the same village which the Chinese explorer Huan Sang had visited when he landed on India's coast a long time back. And also he made the connection that Huan Sang himself had come from Xi Jinping's hometown, that is Xi'an. So this emotion, cultural connect, he worked on it, and he hoped this, with economic engagement going up, will give him stability for a few years. It was a good calculation and a good effort at trying to find peace and stabilize things. But there was no coincidence that when Xi Jinping was in India, Chinese PLA also came intruding into Chumar region of Ladakh. Now that's been the pattern. Whenever a Chinese leader comes to India, or you will find some Chinese intrusion somewhere or the other, it's as if to remind India that this problem persists. A calculation was again probably made that this was not Xi Jinping, because it will be uncivil of him to do so. It is probably the generals of the PLA who are doing it on their own, either to embarrass him or to complicate things for India. Now, I would submit that this was a miscalculation made by our side, probably because our side's minds are much too conditioned now, or were much too conditioned until then, by the behavior of Pakistani generals. That just as the Pakistani generals do things to embarrass their civilian leaders, so do the Chinese. But in China, it doesn't happen like that. Xi Jinping is also the commander of the armed forces, Central Military Commission, and any expectation that he will go and take action against those generals and they may have embarrassed him soon met with realism and lost their way, because all those generals got promoted in the course of time. Still, an effort was made to keep things stable with China. There was a summit after summit. And then again in Doklam in late summer of 2017, Chinese again came, giving you some indication of their intentions going ahead. That caused some alarm. You saw some little urgency. These 36 Rafales were ordered. But once again, the confidence was that jang nahi hogi. Hum jang na hone denge. As Vajpayee wrote in his poem, a war will not happen. Why would it not happen? Because of all the various reasons, my personalized diplomacy. In fact, it does seem that the Indian Air Force wanted a minimum of 60 plus Rafales, but they were told 36 is enough. Why do you need so many of these expensive aircraft? Because there isn't going to be a war anyway. Now, first warning that India had allowed its military strength to fray came during the Pulwama Balakot situation, because the Balakot strike, which had limited success, and also the following days skirmish in the air, which made it quite evident that Pakistan Air Force, though much smaller than Indian Air Force, outranged it in beyond visual range missiles and probably had more plentiful resources in terms of airborne early warning and control systems. And that was a reminder that India had not been upgrading its military as much as it should have been, because India's security and the stability around India is predicated on two things. That militarily, India should have sufficient superiority over Pakistan to carry out a punitive strike. So India should have punitive capability over Pakistan, and India should have defensive deterrent capability vis-a-vis China. So the Chinese know that if we come making mischief, we'll suffer such damage that it won't be worth it. But these 6 years of budgetary, I would say, decline, because in effect this was a decline if you add all the factors. After 10 years of freeze during the UPA, where decisions were not taken easily, in fact on defense decisions were rarely taken, particularly under Mr. Antony. So that almost a decade and a half's ignoring of the armed forces have left them in a situation where a country like China may have thought that, look, I don't particularly intend to go to war, but India now looks so much weaker militarily, and I am so superior militarily that I can try something else. And that reminds us of something that Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Brajesh Mishra had done in 2002 after Parliament attack. They launched Op Parakram. So they called it coercive diplomacy, that we don't particularly want to go to war, but we piled our forces. The Pakistanis know either they commit to eschew terrorism or we are going to war with them. So question at that point was that if you make the threat of war so realistic, can't things get out of your hands? And the answer to that was that the threat of war, for coercive diplomacy to work, the threat of war has to be so real that even we begin to believe it. Think like the Chinese for a moment. Now, last year in 2019 August, India changed the status of Kashmir. That's when a new assertion was made about taking Aksai Chin back from China. The Chinese would see that, they'll look at the other situation, they'll look at your objections to Chinese investments in Pakistan, CPEC. They will also see the situation vis-a-vis Pakistan, that Pakistan feels much weaker than India. Also, India is now doing things in Kashmir which Pakistan has no ability to stop. So you have to give Pakistan reassurance. At the same time, you also want to tell India who the boss is in the region. So at that point, why shouldn't we also, this is Xi's mind, why should we also not try coercive diplomacy? We don't particularly want to go to war. Ho gaya to ho gaya, but let's pile all these three divisions of my army and my heavy stuff, that's my tanks, armored personnel carriers, my modern aircraft, my drones, and pile them up in such a way that everything is visible to even commercial satellites. So this is to build pressure. So that is what the Chinese were watching, and it could be that that is what they are doing right now. Now our own army's very audacious action, particularly on the south bank of Pangong Tso, has shown that this is not the India of 1962, and this is not the Indian Army of 1962. This is a very tough, very capable army. But at the same time, the asymmetry between the two defense forces now is quite substantial, which should not have been the case. In fact, while this action by the Indian Army on Kailash Range, as it's called, shows that this is not the India of 1962, the very fact that we've again gone running around the world making emergency purchases of winter clothing, especially from the US under our new defense agreements, also tells you that we haven't quite learned our lessons from 1962. So there's been a lot of complacence. Now you will ask me, why do I say Mr. Modi made half a blunder? Because I think half of his presumption was correct, that there cannot be a war now. The second half was a blunder, that there cannot be a war even if India is not upgrading its military. Because with any adversary and any permanent adversary, and both our adversaries are permanent adversaries, Pakistan as well as China, it's just that God has placed us in such a neighborhood, we can't change our neighbors. That permanent adversaries like that, to dissuade them, you have to keep a minimum military strength. If you let your military strength fray below that level, then they will be emboldened and they will use their military to put you under pressure, whether they want to go to war or not. I still don't believe anybody wants to go to war, but today India is being subjected to the same coercive diplomacy by the Chinese by piling up its forces on our Ladakh borders that India had done with Pakistan in 2002. And that is the half blunder that Prime Minister Modi has made in the last 6 years by underinvesting in Indian defense. Having said that, once again, I bring back Diwali. So as we talk now and do our heavy analysis, sitting in the comfort of Delhi and air conditioning and everything and a mask at hand just to keep ourselves safe, think of all those 50, 60, 70,000 troops who are now sitting in Ladakh, all at 16,000 feet plus in completely desolate mountains without any vegetation, any human being, any animal life, except fellow soldiers, and temperatures dipping already to minus 20, 25 degrees Celsius. It is their Diwali as well, so please also light a lamp for them.